welcome to Night Clerk Radio, episode 88, where we are continuing our accidental record label month by doing the music of VILL4IN Records, which was brought to our attention, I guess, I sort of knew the name by some people on our Discord. We're like, hey, you should talk about them. They do a variety of like vaporwave and synthwave largely, but like all kinds of subgenres therein. There's like sovietwave and Barber beats and some slushy stuff, some video gamey stuff all around in that vein, that aesthetic, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So the record label is named, I don't know if it's fair to say it's named after, that might be too strong a word, but it's takes the name from VILL4IN the artist, who is a vaporwave artist, music producer, produced under Ghoul, Cypher, Haze. They have some classic albums like Mother and Void 004, Void 004, however you're supposed to say it. I don't know. Which the album Mother, I remembered once I listened to it. I was like, oh yeah, I remember this. But then the record label idea just came out of a discussion with a friend of like starting a label and re-releasing stuff and kind of helping other artists get known. Like most vaporwave labels, it's an artist who just wants to help other artists, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like all the story of all of these that we've talked about, right? It's just like, oh yeah, I just wanted to help other artists in my area. Oh fuck, I feel like an asshole. I'm blanking on it. There's the Brazilian label we did, where it's just like, yeah, I just want to highlight other like.
Oh right, yeah,
yeah.
No one gets into this like for the money, right? It's because
you love it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no like MBAs lining up to like form vaporwave record labels because I think that's going to be big money in the future. Yeah, it's for the love of the art. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It turns out like, yeah, producing, I'm sure is creatively satisfying too, because there's a lot of, creating an identity and like setting up art and assets and like figuring out and community management and all that other stuff. Yeah. And plus the craft of like making cassettes and vinyl and stuff like that. It's got to be fun.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just digging up. So there's an interview with VILL4IN that's in the show notes. But yeah, the description of how it started is fairly, I don't know, like it's not, it's fairly chill. It's just him and his buddy Ghost are driving around and saying it'd be fun to have a record label and start one to kind of print some techno labels at first. And they did some stuff off the Cypher project and then just move towards experimental music overall was the idea.
Okay.
So it's just putting out vinyls and re-releasing other stuff.
Yeah, their label does have a very eclectic selection of albums. Mm-hmm. It was hard to pick just two albums, right? Like, because they have everything. They have gimmick albums like sovietwave, which is themed after
gimmick.
Yeah. Sorry, themed after the Tommy Wiseau film, The Room, featuring a lot of R&B, like pitch shifted, and like Floor 122, which is more hypnagogic, like slush, like ambient kind of thing. Which I'd already listened to, I'd already familiar with, and it's very chill and fun. But yeah, it's an embarrassment of riches, of musical riches in this label. Yeah, not just a lot of stylistic variety, but also a lot of like source and inspiration variety. I noticed just scrolling through the Bandcamp is that there's a lot of like, yes, unfair association, but a lot of vaporwave I either associate with like American or Japanese 80s, 90s culture. Mm-hmm. And this has a lot of like Korean, Chinese, there's a lot of like Middle Eastern influence, like Eastern European, Russian. And there's like little pockets of those throughout the vaporwave scene. Of course, they're not the only place that does this, but I feel like having it all in one location was like, oh yeah, there's actually like a lot of different cultural representations and sample bases and stuff that you can pull from that are interesting. Mm-hmm. And also means that a lot of the ways that I think about media maybe don't apply to that because I don't have the same like cultural background. Yeah, no, it's a very cool record label and just like it's fun just to dive through all of their music. Just like, oh, this album cover looks neat. What's this about? And
yeah, I mean, I think I don't know if you were, but I was totally just sold on the album cover for what I chose.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, no, that it's an extremely good album cover.
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess the other thing, I don't know if you want to talk more about this. But we have also always found it interesting when like Vaporwave does multimedia projects, right? Not just doing a visual mix for your album or whatever, which is cool, but really branching out. And you had found this community post on VILL4IN where they're doing like a cyberpunk hangout MMO.
Oh yeah.
Second Life for Vaporwave.
Yeah.
I guess maybe that's a bit reductive, maybe, but that's the idea, I think.
Yeah. Void City. It's with them, a collaboration with Villain and Motherboard. Of course, Motherboard is spelled with only one O and no E's. So
no A in board.
Yeah. It's
doesn't really matter.
Yeah. You get the idea. And yeah, it's an online chat like hangout thing, browser based that's coming. And they have a little trailer video for it, and it looks pretty neat.
You want to hang out? Fuck Discord, fuck social media. We'll go hang out in Void City.
Hell yeah! Just have our little anime little avatars hanging around, chatting, watching YouTube on a screen in the MMO, like 320 by 240 screen. Yeah, it'd be nice.
I'll play once on Game Boy, maybe. Port it down, but yeah, I think those kind of little side projects are interesting and, creative outlets. But yeah, first and foremost, it is a record label. It does release music, so we should probably talk about music. That was from track 3 off our first album, The Curse of Colonialism 1 by Modest by Default, who is a Barber Beats artist out of Argentina. This album was originally released in March of 2022 as part of a trilogy. So there is a Curse of Colonialism 2 and 3, although only 1 and 2 have gotten this vinyl re-release. So this was the Bandcamp link to Villain's page is a vinyl re-release that was done with Assembly Records in March of this year. Yeah, and like I said, it was sold on the album cover, which is a woman with an AK-47 protecting herself, and the title and stuff. I like putting little like bot buzzwords in our episodes and just seeing if we attract people. Not just as
got that SEO brain, huh?
Not just as SEO fodder. But like, I find it fascinating. Like I'm surprised when we did that Antifa record label that I didn't get more crazies.
Oh yeah,
at us.
That's fair.
So I'm seeing it's a good album. Don't get me wrong. It's not the only reason I picked it, but I am curious to see if just even mentioning like colonialism is going to get some bots. Usually, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, that's just a weird aside. But I was just thinking about kind of the stuff that's like doesn't really come through in the music in the same way as directly. Like you can still think of like where the samples come from as being relevant, or like taking music back if it's been like gentrified or appropriated by other cultures. Just that little bit of like politics in the title. Just curious. So because people respond weird to stuff like that sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's true. You never know how people are going to react when something hits on them. I did this a superhero role-playing game called Base Raiders, and I made one post on a website for Base Raiders talking about like, super soldier drugs. And then like, I've gotten literally like over 200 comments on that post from people who are like, yes, please sign me up for the super soldier drugs. Yes, I am weak. I need them. I will take any risks. It is fine. And it's like,
don't unironically realize like it's a joke. Like
it's for a game.
The government made serums for some soldiers.
Yep. They want to believe.
Sorry, that is quite the tangent on this actual album. So what is The Curse of Colonialism? The Curse of Colonialism is a Barber Beats album. So it is heavily plunderphonics. The artist admits, I think it says on their Bandcamp page, is like everything is stolen and everything is free. I think it's like what it says on Modest by Default's Bandcamp page. But it's atmospheric and it's super chill, which I really like. I don't know why these samples were more interesting to me than others, because I think we did a Barber Beats episode. We talked about like how do you treat it if you do like very minimal processing to a sample? Like, how do you think about that?
Is it a playlist? Is it curated rather than like produced?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's one of these gray areas. And like, as Barber beats grows in more popularity, it's something we'll keep running into, I think. I quite like this album too. I found a YouTube, they put all 3 albums together as one YouTube video. I've been listening to that a bit, aside from just focusing on this one album. I did find one comment. This is the stuff very symbolic for me due to my African heritage. It's a soundtrack to my own history with colonialism and slavery. Thank you, my fellow human kin.
Yeah, I saw a similar comment on one of the other ones on Bandcamp that was like, you can never talk as internet comments, but it was like, as a former rebel in Madagascar, this music speaks to me.
You never know what's a shitpost and what's real. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because I sort of got into the notion of like, well, if we talk about these albums or these Plunderphonics albums as like being memories for things that don't exist, you start to have people who are like nostalgic for like wars they never fought in. I don't know. I just went down this weird path of like, this comment just sent me down a weird path of like, what is happening? I just want to enjoy this chill music. Oh God. Just let me enjoy the album. But it is interesting having them all together to see how different they feel. Because I do need to listen to 2 and 3. I didn't get a chance, unfortunately. But, you know, they're aesthetically different. For example, in this Crystal Colonialism 1, I think all the track titles are Estonian.
Oh, okay.
Because I put a bunch of them into like Google Translate and just set it to auto detect. And it came up with Estonian for every one. So I don't know if that's because it's some other dialect that's close or if it actually is in Estonian. But the tracks on track 2 are in English and then in Russian, I think, or some other Cyrillic based language on 3. So they do represent kind of different parts of the world, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there are some like commonalities in like the tracks themselves in terms of like instrumentation, right? Like there's a lot of guitar, there's a lot of like heavily processed vocals that are used for the sound rather than the lyrics, like in track 1 and in track 5. But yeah, it's again very, very like very Barber beats in that like it gets that very chill and calm and like relaxed point of view, or like that relaxed vibe to it, but it's not like going to put you to sleep. I think that's sort of the difference like an ambient piece does. Like it's it's for the after party, not for the party. That's EDM. It's not for going to sleep. That's ambient. It's like it's the 3 stages of a night out, right? Like the party, the after party, and then finally passing out. So
that crucial stumbling around for shawarma or pizza.
Oh, yeah.
The bar phase of the night. A lot of that in Boston. Yeah, I get it, because a lot of the samples you'll hear throughout this, both in the one I played, is a lot of this like jazzy, funky, new age-ish. It's very soulful. It's very relaxing. It's very atmospheric. I think there's like a little bit of work on the vocals sometimes, but in general, there's not nearly as much production to talk about with each track, which is not a knock. It's just not the same as like chopping and screwing something or like really mutating something into an entirely unrecognizable track. Although I do wish I knew what some of the samples were, because I think the most interesting part about Barber Beats albums to me, which we've said before, is that they're crate digging for someone like me who is maybe not as interested in crate digging anymore as I was in my 20s. So I really do actually wish there's like even an artist list of like where some of the stuff comes from. And Modest by Default has done that on other albums. I was looking through some other albums on not the Villain Bandcamp page, but the artist themselves Bandcamp page. On a handful of albums, they had links in the liner notes on Bandcamp to like sample artist credits, basically.
Oh, okay.
So not being like, some Barber Beats artists are like weird about talking about samples. And this was very forward. This is like, hey, these are the 15 artists or whatever that made these 12 tracks or you know, and that was cool, because then you can go look them up and listen to other stuff. And there's like a little bit of that research is done for you. And in this case, you're kind of left with just the samples, which is fine. I think the 3 together would be a very nice playlist to put together. So in fact, why don't I play another little bit from track 8, whose title translates to "These Wounds Only Make Me More Beautiful." This is an example of, even by this album standards, a little more down tempo, but I just could listen to this type of stuff all night. Like, this is great to work to. This is great to relax to. Mm-hmm. Probably chill enough to read to. I'm very picky about what I read to.
Yeah.
But I think I could even read to this. And, you know, for this reason, that it's kind of hard to talk about the music because there's not as much like meta stuff and production stuff. You know, we don't always talk about Barber Beats albums, but it does kind of remind me that I probably should check them out because there's still probably something in there that I'll enjoy.
It's interesting because like Barber Beats occupies a similar space in the music, at least for me, to lo-fi beats, but it's different enough. Like lo-fi is, you know, usually more original compositions, but like more, I don't want to say conservative, but more restrained, I guess. And Barber Beats, you know, because they're curating from this massive list of trip hop artists and R&B and jazz and like all these other people. It's a lot. They're livelier compositions a lot of times, but like it's still something you can work to. You can listen, you read to just. Yeah, it's not as active as like EDM, which demands your attention, or, you know, like drum and bass is not music to read to. Weirdly enough. You know, maybe an episode where we talk about the difference between lo-fi and Barber Beats and like what they're going for, because it's similar, but they are different enough that you can tell. Like this track in particular had a little bit of like has a little bit of that lo-fi crackle to it, but like that's sort of the exception. Like Barber Beats is usually very smooth and like produced, and it doesn't have that like low fidelity like aesthetic or like production technique that lo-fi hip hop does.
Right.
Yeah.
Something to consider. And also, again, Curse of Colonialism, great theme, great title. So also, it would be interesting to know more about the samples. Like I said, if there's some aspect of like taking back gentrified music that they were like, you know, curated in that sense. Either way, I think if you want something chill to listen to, it's definitely worth checking out.
I feel like there's a joke here that like, if you're this type of person, you should make this type of music. And like, if you're a graphic designer, you should be a Barber Beats artist because you need to make a really fucking killer ass album art cover if you're going to make Barber Beats. Cause like almost every Barber Beats album has like a really well designed album cover. At least all the ones that I've seen. Like that's the bare minimum for an album. And yeah.
Well, there we go. Solve the mystery of Barber Beats.
And that was a sample from track 1, Welcome, from the album Cosmic Tsunami by Password, but I think it actually is VILL4IN because it's the same person who did the Void 004, I think. At least the characters translate the same in Google Translate. All of the album title and the artist name and all the track titles are in Korean, but thanks to Google Translate, it is Cosmic Tsunami. And I love this album. I don't know if it's original composition or Plunderphonics, but because I feel like there's some sampling from video game music, but I love it because so there's a bit of a story about me listening to this album because last week, massive thunderstorm in Springfield, and I lost power late at night, but I wasn't ready to go to sleep yet. And so I put this album on while lying on the couch, watching the storm out the window and just really thinking about this music. And it made me realize the album art is important to look at. And it's the reason why I picked this album before I even listened to it, because it's a motherfucking space whale. And space whale is obviously a shared joke between me and my friend Caleb Stokes, friend of the podcast, because long story short, Caleb is annoyed by the trope of space whales, especially in serious science fiction like Eclipse Phase. But I find them goofy.
Well, fuck him. I love my space whale pin.
I know. I love space whales too. And so it's this pixel art of a space whale with a city on its back. And so it's very evocative of like Japanese RPG video games. So in one sense, this album is extremely, extremely nostalgic, right? Like the idea of listening to that old video game music and remembering those happy times you had grinding levels in Final Fantasy or Disgaea or, Fire Emblem or whatever. But on the other hand, this music also has a very cosmic, like space ambient, like aesthetic to it because it's in space, and like nostalgia is inward looking, right? Like it's about like remembering it's remembering, personal things to you. It's extremely inward looking, but like space ambient, like music of the hearts of space, is very outwardly looking. It's about like being in tune with the cosmos and being aware, being in awe of the nature of the grandeur of space and the universe and trying to be in tune with it. And so you have these really contrasting like viewpoints, but Cosmic Tsunami, this album is trying to like square this like inward and outward looking music at the same time. And it kind of like, I feel like this album is trying to say that you're hurtling through the space for eternity, but at the same time, it's the fleeting nature of pleasant memories. Hold on to them because they too will disappear into the void of space. Yeah, so I remember like I listened to Hearts of Space growing up as a kid because my parents would put it on public radio. So if you're not aware, Hearts of Space is a long-standing public radio show about like ambient new age music. They cover all kinds of things, but it's like slow music for fast times is their tagline. And it's been going since 1973, and it's still ongoing with like the same like producers. And obviously we should do a show on that in the future because you were not aware of it. But like it's this something I've been aware of for a long time because they made fun of it in my Mystery Science Theater 3000. But anyway, so I was thinking about this because this music is an interesting contrast between chiptune video game music and like spacey kind of ambient music. And it's like a bit of like lo-fi, like crackle, and also these plunderphonic samples of like old TV show bits about video games and like these weird elements coming in together to make it this very like interesting meditation on space and memory.
Yeah. I think the blend of genres in that sense is what's so interesting, being like RPG chiptune type music set against like lo-fi nostalgia haze. I don't know what to call it otherwise.
Yeah, exactly.
And sort of the blend of styles, because even the video game aspect of the video game music to me felt like a mix of like early PlayStation music, like especially track 1 feels very like Fire Emblem, Final Fantasy, like those early kind of PlayStation, or maybe late SNES, so maybe it is 16-bit. But then like the opening percussion on track 2 is like that older like 8/16-bit where you didn't really have drums in the same way. Like you didn't have like MIDI drums. Your sense of percussion came from a static channel, if I remember correctly. Like somebody who's like a real expert on chiptunes can correct me, but it's my understanding that like on like say the NES, you had like a couple, you had maybe like a square wave channel, a saw wave channel, and then like a static channel, I think, or maybe two of one of those. But the static is what they would use for like drums, because it's like so that's like your drums in like Double Dragon or Mega Man or whatever.
Very bit crushed, yeah.
Yeah, well, but the thing is, like, it was not even bit crush because it's just like a static channel. It's just like white noise.
Okay.
But it's in short percussive bursts, so it kind of accents like your 2 and your 4, and then it feels like a snare drum sitting under everything. That was how they kind of simulated drums in early 8-bit music. And there's some of that like in track 2. So there's like a little bit of blend of chiptune technologies throughout the album, it feels like.
Yeah. I'm really curious about this album, especially with its like very careful selection of sampled like vocals. Like if these are like, oh, this sounds cool, or if this is like deeply personal to the producer. And track 2, by the way, the title translates into Space Whale. So,
oh, well, there you go. That's why it's the best one.
It's very good. But yeah, it's also a short album, which is really nice. It's like 26 minutes and some change. So it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's something I listened to it twice that night watching the storm and just laying on the couch thinking about it, really focusing on it. I really like there's a lot of variety in terms of like track 7 has this really nice high end, like crystalline kind of tinkling sounds contrasting with like a low bit crush kind of engine roar sound and like a string section. Track 7 is called Event Horizon, by the way. And track 5 has like wind and storm sounds. So the cosmic tsunami itself. And that's the title of the track is Cosmic Tsunami. So yeah, no, there's a lot in a brief amount of time. It gives you wonder to the universe. Let's play another sample from the last track, Memories. I just really like that build up towards the end. Is it its final statement. But yeah, this is a really, really pleasant album. It's really, if you're at all nostalgic for it, or if you like Space Ambient, I think this is a really interesting mix. And I wonder what the artist was thinking in terms, if they were just like, I like Space Ambient and I like, chiptune, let's just mix them together, or if there was like a deeper meaning to it. Either way, it's fun.
Yeah, I was trying to think. I guess the other thing I wanted to comment on, which you'd mentioned also, but just to reiterate, another thing that to me really stood out is the aspects where it is like crackly over it, because I also just this is why genre is interesting, because you give a genre and it sets up expectations in someone's mind. Is like chiptunes, I always think of as being cleaner in their production. Kind of simulate, or to actually be like the feed right off the sound chip for a given system. So I thought the interesting addition of like static and crackle on top of everything was cool.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because like video game music is often like programmed. It's not even like played. It's not like played and recorded. It's literally programmed into the code of the game, especially in those older games. So it's as clean as it possibly can be. It is, there's no recording medium. It's just following the instructions of the computer. Yeah. So yeah, that another interesting contrast. So yeah, just the aspect of like the blending of styles and everything is cool. I'm trying to think if there's any other tracks I really liked. I think for me, another track I really liked was, I thought track 6 stood out because it felt like your token underwater track to me. I don't think it is, because it's space. You're probably not underwater in space, although whales can be underwater. So you never really know. But it just felt like more like playful, bubbly under all the crackling, which kind of made me think of like classic underwater pieces. And then track 10, which you played, is great. And track 7 is another one that's like a lot of like atmospheric, cosmic-y. Oh, yeah. Drone that I just really liked. I think those types of tracks are really my jam. I do mention track 9, which is literally just question mark. There's no Korean there. It's just question mark, because it has the sample of a news report about video games, but also has this, it sounds like a woman speaking in a foreign language, like maybe Italian or Spanish, like a Romance language, I think, just talking very calmly about something. And I'm very curious about that. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe if I there's a YouTube upload of this. Maybe if I put on the closed caption, it'll solve the mystery for me. Oh yeah, just let the robots do the work for you. Yeah, be the internet space whale. I will be the cyberspace. Has anybody done a cyberspace whale? Ooh, I guess the dolphin and Johnny Mnemonic's close. Yeah. Yeah.
Not a whale. I know.
Yeah.
I don't need your biology facts, but
We need a new Star Trek of the.
it's time.
Yeah.
They did Wrath of Khan. I mean, JJ, come back. It's the fourth. It's the fourth of the new movies.
Mm-hmm.
Bring back the
closed
whales.
captioning unavailable for the YouTube version.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Well, you tried.
Yeah.
You did your best.
I did my best.
That's all anybody can ever ask. Okay. Very fun, very creative album. I'm really glad you ended up going with it, because I probably would have if you hadn't, but it's, man, I just love all the blending of styles. And
Yeah, I actually did listen to Sovietwave,
Mm-hmm.
but then I was like, boy, these are just R&B songs. These are just like slightly pitch shifted. And I was like, I get it. And I enjoy it. Like, good job. You did the right thing with this album, but it was not, I was kind of hoping that they would take more things from the actual soundtrack and like, I don't know, be more playful.
You want like You Are My Rose, Vaporwave?
Yeah. Like, be more playful with them. Do some fun things with them, because I've actually listened to the soundtrack for The Room on my own. I've actually, there's a couple of those websites.
I'll edit that out for you. Don't worry.
Well, you know how there's some websites you can upload a track and do vaporwave effects to?
Sure.
I like would take the Room title track and upload that and play around with that and make it sound like vaporwave. A fun little thing to do. Yeah, no, it's anyways, Cosmic Tsunami is a great album, and it's like 26 minutes, so there's no excuse not to listen to it.
Thank you so much for listening. It was fun to dig into some of the music on the VILL4IN Records label. If you have any personal favorites on this, let us know. Let us know what you think. If there's any albums you think we missed or that you really like, always love to hear about it. It's so hard to dig through such a large archive on your own. So any guidance is always appreciated. Next episode, we're going to be pushing my comfort boundaries a little bit, I guess, and getting into some, I don't know, EDM-ish vaporwave adjacent. If you just say genres and then say adjacent, you can't really be wrong.
Yeah,
that's the one thing I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
So supposedly new Blank Banshee coming out in a couple weeks. There's been some new Too Mellow. So yeah, we're going to do a little more beat focused music, which as a guy who tends to gravitate more towards the slushy and the ambient, be interesting. So hope to see you there for that. But also, if you like this episode and you want to hear more of it, we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/nightclerkradio. We have 30 some bonus episodes, cool Discord community, bonus content in the works, allegedly, supposedly. I say it every time. Eventually it'll be true. You can also find us on Twitter at nightclerkradio. I am at Burke McBurkinson. Ross is at Ross Payton. You'll probably find Night Clerk Radio most anywhere, except for maybe the current boom of social media sites. But yeah, website, Facebook, if that's your thing, Instagram, Blue Sky, YouTube, anywhere. Maybe a thread someday. Hard to say.
Yeah, maybe.
There's so many.
It's so many.
Stupid now. I think we have, what is that, co-host?
The co-host is one of them, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's one of those. Never did Mastodon. We should probably do that too. Doesn't matter. I don't look at any of them anyways, I've always said. But wherever you do look at it, you should take a moment to rate, review, etc. Whatever his little algorithm trigger button that site has, you should click it because it really helps us out. We also always advocate building community, either through like our Discord or other Discords or however you want to do it. Talk to people about what you like, share your interests, build friends, build maybe future family in Ross's case, sometimes enemies, sometimes frenemies.
Frenemies, yeah.
Either way, enjoy your space whale music and we'll listen to you. Well, you'll listen to us next time and we'll thank you for it. Goodbye.
Bye.